welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we're going to be talking all about nutrition labels. How to read them, what to look out for, how to compare labels, and so much more. When I first started getting into nutrition and just eating a little bit healthier, I was totally overwhelmed with how to read nutrition labels. It seems like it should be something that's pretty straightforward, but if you don't know what to look for, it can be pretty complicated. Before we get into the video though, I just wanted to thank every single one of you for watching this video. Thank you to everyone who's subscribed to my channel. I am almost at 1,000 subscribers, which is just insane to me. I know that's pretty much nothing in comparison to big YouTubers, but 1,000 people is a lot of people. That just blows my mind. And to thank you for that, when I do hit that milestone, I'm going to be doing a giveaway. So without giving too much away just yet, it's going to be a whole bunch of my favorite products. It will be worldwide. I'll ship them to you no matter where you are. So yeah, if you aren't subscribed already and you don't want to miss out on this giveaway, then hit that subscribe button right now and let's get into the video. The first thing you want to look for when you look at a nutrition label is macros. So if you aren't familiar with what macros are, macro is short for macronutrients, which are carbs, protein, and fat. So those are the 3 macronutrients, and then there's also micronutrients. Whenever you look at a nutrition label, there will always be these 3. Now, depending on what your diet looks like, you will want different macronutrients. So for instance, I eat pretty low carb, so I always look out for carbohydrates when I'm looking at a nutrition label, and I make sure that they're not too high. And macronutrients will always be measured in grams on the label. So right now I'm looking at this ABC spread from Melrose Health. This is a nut butter with almonds, Brazil nuts, and cashews. This is delicious. I am loving this, by the way. But anyways, so on the label you will see there are 2 columns. There is one column that says average per serve, and there's another column that says average per 100 grams. I'm not sure if in the US and Canada they do the average per 100 grams on every label, or if they just have per serve. But in Australia it will always have per 100 grams, which is really good for comparing labels, and I'll get into that a little bit more later. So looking at the average per serve, you can see how many kilojoules or calories are in one serve. You can see the amount of protein, the fats, and then under fats there's the different types of fats. So there's saturated, trans, polyunsaturated, and monounsaturated. Next we have carbohydrates, the total, and then we have sugars. Below that is sodium, fiber, calcium, magnesium, potassium, cholesterol, gluten. Not all labels will have the nutrients listed at the end, so not all of them will have fiber, calcium, magnesium, all those ones at the bottom, but all labels will have protein, carbs, fat, and sugars. One thing to watch out for when you're reading a nutrition label is the portion size. So this one says average per 10 gram serve. So I'm gonna assume 10 grams is about a tablespoon. So when you're looking at the label and you're like, oh, that is very high in calories, or that is very low in calories, or that is very high in fat, or whatever it may be, just keep in mind the portion size. So a lot of times the portion size will be less than what you would actually eat. This is so true for cereal. If you ever look at the labels on cereal boxes, sometimes it's for like a 1/4 cup of cereal, and I mean, like, who eats only a 1/4 cup? So they'll have these big claims on the front about only being 100 calories per serve or something like that, but then when you look at the serving size, it is so tiny. So that is something to be wary of. Another thing to note, and this is more specific to Australia, is how carbohydrates are listed. So here we have carbohydrates, and then we have fiber, and they're both separate. And I can see that per 100 grams, there are 7.2 grams of carbs and 8 grams of fiber. Now, that's not totally accurate, because on labels in Australia, the carbohydrates that are written down here isn't actually total carbs, it's net carbs. So net carbs are total carbs minus fiber. This really messed with me when I first started trying to eat keto, because everything I was reading online was like, you can just subtract the fiber from the carbs and that's the net carbs. So something like this, I'd be like, oh, 7.2 minus 8, but that is not the case. It is actually net carbs that are already written here. The next thing you want to look at when you're reading a nutrition label is the amount of sugar. So in this ABC spread, there are 0.6 grams of sugar. That is a good amount, that's very low, and I know that that's all natural sugar. There's no added sugar in this, and I'll get into how I know that in a little bit. The next thing you want to look at are the ingredients. So here, there are only 3 ingredients. It says 34% almonds, 33% Brazil nuts, and 33% cashews lightly roasted. Foods like this that only have whole foods, no weird ingredients, additives, things like that. These are the foods that I try to buy. Some of the more mainstream nut butters, things like that, they'll have added sugar in them, they'll have extra salt added. Salt I'm not too picky about, but just something to be mindful of. Or just preservatives, other things like that. If you can get something that doesn't have any of that, it's just totally whole foods, then that is a win in my book. So looking at another label here, this is for barbecue sauce. These guys are notorious for having added sugar. The ingredients in this one are tomatoes, sugar, vinegar, lemon juice, sea salt, thickener, in brackets, modified potato and cornstarch. I think that's xanthan gum, citric acid, malt extract, barley wheat, spices, color, 105C, and garlic. So a couple weird things in here that I'm not too familiar with. A general rule of thumb when I am choosing what to buy is if there's anything I don't know how to pronounce or that I don't know what it is, I try to steer clear of that. The way the ingredients are listed is also very important as well. The first ingredient is going to be the ingredient that there's the most of, and the second ingredient is going to be the one that there's the second most of, and the last ingredient is going to be the one that there's the least of. The top 2 ingredients here are tomato and then sugar. Now, if I go down to the nutrition info, I can see that there are 4.5 grams of sugar per 1 serve, which is 15 grams. So I'm going to assume that 15 grams is about a tablespoon again. And I know that every 4 grams of sugar is 1 teaspoon. So per 1 tablespoon of this barbecue sauce, there is over 1 teaspoon of sugar. So this is not something I would eat very often, if at all, maybe once in a blue moon. I'm not the biggest fan of barbecue sauce anyway, so it's not a big deal. But yeah, another thing to note about sugar is the recommended daily amount women are supposed to consume is about 25 grams, and for men that is about 38. I mean, you can take those guidelines with a grain of salt. I try to consume way less than 25 grams of sugar per day. I think the less sugar, the better, period, no matter if it's natural or not. So I touched briefly on some things to look out for when you're reading labels. The main one being added sugar. I am so passionate about this topic. I refuse to buy anything with added sugar. And unfortunately, sugar is one of the trickiest things to read on a label. Companies try to deceive us by using different names for sugar. I think I read online that there's over 60 different names for sugar that can be written on a nutritional label. So I'll put them up here and you guys can take a quick look. And one thing I really want to emphasize is that no matter if sugar is natural or not, sugar is sugar. It still affects your body the same way. So something like orange juice, for example, that says like 100% made from fresh oranges. Okay, yeah, it is. They're not lying, but there is still so much sugar in there, and that is still going to impact you the same way as if you're just to eat the same amount of like table sugar. Another one I see sometimes, the label will say like organic raw sugar, and I'm like, okay, cool, it's still sugar. Another thing to watch out for is anything labeled low fat, because 9 times out of 10, when they take out the fat, they add in sugar. One of the worst offenders for this is yogurt, especially flavored yogurt. So when you're comparing 2 labels of a similar product, Make sure to note the portion sizes. If the portion sizes are different, then make sure to use the per 100 grams and that will give you an exact comparison. So to summarize, the things you should be looking out for when you look at a nutrition label: look at the macros, look at how much fat, carbs, and protein are in the product, look at how much sugar is in the product, and then look at the ingredients. I don't buy anything without looking at the label first, and I don't buy too much packaged stuff to begin with, but when I do, I try to buy things with as little ingredients as possible. Obviously for something like spices, where there needs to be a whole bunch of different things in, like for Italian seasoning or something along those lines, yeah, okay, if the ingredients are like garlic, onion powder, things like that, those are all things I recognize and that makes sense to me. But when the words start getting longer, more trickier, when they start throwing in like numbers, additive 406 or something like that, that's when I have to stop and think about it. When you're first starting out trying to eat a little bit healthier and you start to read the labels, it might seem like it's so much work. You'll probably spend so much time in the grocery store that first time. But after a little while, you start to get used to reading the labels. You know what to look for right away. You also get familiar with the brands. You know which ones don't have added sugar and which ones do. So I promise you it gets easier. It's not as big of a chore as you think. I hope this video was informative. I hope you learned something. Thank you for joining me today. Remember to subscribe if you haven't already and to click that notification button so you don't miss out on the giveaway. And please, please, please check me out on Instagram as well. I have been posting there a lot. I would love to have you over there, hang out. You can also DM me, we can talk. I love to talk to people on the internet, not in real life. And I'll see you next time. Bye guys.